So now we know Remy and Papoose as black love couples. We've been knowing that for years. Pap held Remy down while she served 6 years in prison. She ain't had nothing to worry about because he held everything down from her son to the home and everything. When she came home, everything was cool. After that, things got a little rocky. Last year, rumors started to spread that Remy was dealing with a battle rapper named Easy the Block Captain. The general public will never know what happened with that or would know what was really going on. So that's all they had to do was speculate, right? This morning, Remy gave us a whole story, child. So around 3 o'clock, Remy posted a screenshot of a text conversation between Papoose and another woman, and the woman happens to be world champion boxer Claressa Shields. So when she heard Remy's voice, she hung up, and so the phone was still open, so she just must have started going through text messages, and this is what she found. This is what she posted too. Papoose shared a story. This is the only thing that he said.
You hate to see it, man. You hate to see it. Remy and Pap were the symbolism.
Nasty.
They were the symbolism of black love, and it sucks to see them going through this because once things go public like this, there is no coming back. So
There's no return.
You just hate to see it. Yeah. Also, I need Claressa to stay focused because her name's been in a lot of stuff lately, and it's probably because her life is about to go to another level.
Yeah.
Because she's got her movie coming out Christmas Day called The Fire Inside, starring Ryan Destiny. Don't let nothing distract you, Claressa. You got a very bright future.
So what are 5 red flags of a covert narcissist?
So a covert narcissist have all the same traits of narcissism: grandiosity, attention seeking, all that stuff that we're familiar with. But these are more introverted, internalized narcissists, like a humble self-importance. They're not beating their chest and saying that they're the greatest, but they're doing that in very passive-aggressive ways. Hypersensitive to criticism. They'll be defensive, but not necessarily combative, although they can do both. They often don't fit in because they feel bad about themselves and they experience higher levels of anxiety and depression than overt narcissists. Self-deprecating, that's often a ploy or even ways of getting attention. They'll say things like, "Oh, I just look so terrible today," and they're waiting for you to go, "No, you don't. No, you don't." They have a lot of social anxiety and they're very passive-aggressive. They're also very much into revenge.
Hey you guys, welcome and welcome back. And today I have a special video for you guys that I feel is a part of an important conversation that we need to have. The conversation is about covert narcissism and how many of us have experienced relationships like this and we may not have even realized it. Now, I do not claim to be a doctor, lawyer, or psychologist, so please do not see this as medical advice, but I have been in some crazy situations and I've had some pretty toxic relationships that can offer some credence to the conversation that we're going to have today, which is about Papoose and Remy Ma and this whole drama that's been unfolding online for the past 48 to 72 hours. Child, I do not claim to know anything about these celebrities more than just some of the things that I hear online, but I can't change what my eyes are seeing. And what I'm seeing right now are 2 damaged people who have been in a toxic relationship that both are fighting for what they feel like they deserve, which isn't necessarily right, but it's the reality of the situation. We are watching them duke it out online, and baby, trust and believe, I'm gonna get to Miss Claressa, but not in this particular video. So we're gonna be touching on a few different things that I've noticed when it comes to witnessing this situation and what I feel like a lot of people need to pay attention to and know. If you guys are new here, be sure to like and subscribe to continue to catch the vibe. I really appreciate all of you guys' support, and I'm really grateful that you guys are finding value in the things that I say. So I wanted to bring you guys this commentary while it was fresh on my brain because I noticed a few things about this situation that I don't really like at all. And one of the hardest battles that I've had to fight in my entire life, which I'm still fighting to this day, is with a person who I was in a relationship with, had a marriage with, had children with, who never really wanted to release me. They never really wanted to let me go, and they felt like it was their entitlement to keep me around or to be the one who was in control of whether or not I could be released or let go. Some of you may have heard me talk about my relationship before in the past, and I've made several videos on this channel about my toxic marriage and the relationship that I had with my oldest children's father. But watching Remy Ma spaz out online really hurt my soul. When I tell you it hurt my soul because I believe that I was married to a covert narcissist, and I believe that Papoose may be exhibiting some symptoms or side effects of a narcissistic personality. And like I said, I'm not a doctor, lawyer, or psychologist, but sometimes we shun the advice of people who've been through things, and we don't listen to people because they've been through things, and we look at them in a different way than maybe we would look at someone who is more typically successful, which causes us not to really pay attention to their advice. And I think that that is the downfall of a lot of us within our communities right now, is that we don't listen to the people who have actually lived through crazy situations. We don't see their opinions as valuable. We don't see their experience as valuable. And because they weren't necessarily able to come out on top, quote unquote, in the average way that people would expect them to come out on top, we don't listen to what they have to say. But when I tell you, looking at the situation with Remy Ma right now and how she's responding and reacting to the way that she's being treated and the things that are happening behind the scenes that we all didn't really know about, but now we do, it's a lot that I feel like she's been dealing with on the back end that people aren't recognizing that we didn't see. There's a lot that she's been dealing with on the back end that she's been internalizing and that she hasn't really expressed outwardly to the public, because both of these people are intertwined in a family and a brand that more than likely makes them the money that they need to sustain their lifestyle, which is more than likely the root cause of why all of this is erupting and exploding now. So I want to get into a little bit of a breakdown that I did, because you know, y'all, I don't like doing work like that, but I do work sometimes, and I want to get into a little breakdown of what I researched and the type of dynamic that I see unfolding, and like from a hindsight perspective when it comes to Remy Ma and Papoose's relationship. Because when I tell y'all I have been living this, and now it's like, when I don't want to tell y'all everything, but I'm going through some tough shit right now. Let's just keep it a bean. Everybody's kind of going through some weird situations and some tough things, and we see it in the media with celebrities because they're more of a focal point to us than the average person. But I guarantee you, a lot of the things energetically that are happening with these celebrities and influencers and even politicians is happening on a more micro level in each and every one of our lives. And that's why we're so kind of engulfed in it, because a lot of it is mirrored or reminiscent of what we're experiencing on an everyday basis right now as well. So that's why I wanted to speak on this, you guys. And I know that was kind of like a long explanation, but it just don't sit right with me what's going on. It doesn't sit right with me how Papoose is approaching this whole situation. And I'm not saying that either one of them are right or wrong, or that both of them didn't have a part to play, because Remy had a part to play too. And I think it's important to take accountability on both sides. But I want to definitely highlight some of the things that I'm seeing when it comes to the way that each of them are acting in this situation, and why I feel personally that it's escalated to this level. So according to my research, child, Remy and Pap met around 2004, right? And to me, this whole situation felt like a humble beginnings type of situation. They started out hungry. Both of them wanted their careers to take off. Both of them were really striving to be more and to do more in their lives. They both wanted to work. They both wanted to grind. They both wanted to make a name for themselves in the industry that they were very passionate about. So there was a commonality there. They both had a mutual interest for each other. And I feel like it wasn't a situation where one of them liked the other one more than the other liked the other one. I don't think it was really like that. And I don't know what necessarily Remy is saying right now, because I heard a few things about how she possibly felt a little bit love bombed, and she felt like she was put on for just so that she would fall in love. But it appears to me that over time there was enough of a mutual interest with the two of these people in each other for them to possibly like have sparks fly, or there be some type of desire for a connection or a relationship. And back at the time that they met, they were kind of, you know, on the same level. And I'm not necessarily completely familiar, because in 2004 I was like in middle school, but they were on the same level in my opinion from the perspective that I see, where maybe one of them had more popularity in one sector, the other may have had more popularity in another sector, but equally they were both kind of yoked or matched when it comes to the level that they were on, which caused them to show mutual interest in each other. And you know, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I feel like that's one of the ways that a lot of people end up in couples and marriages these days, or even in the past, is like they met their spouse or their partner in some type of third space, or they met their spouse or their partner in high school or college, but there was some type of mutual interest and a mutual connectivity that was happening there. So it feels like the beginning of their relationship, like I said, was very humble or very organic in my opinion. However, I think that things started to take a little bit of a different turn as time progressed and as their relationship progressed and as different situations and circumstances started to befall their lives. I personally believe that there was a catalyst event that basically shifted the dynamic of Remy Ma and Papoose's relationship, which was the fact that in July of 2007, Remy was arrested for Makita Barnes Joseph at a Manhattan nightclub, and apparently this was her friend, and there was a dispute over money, and it was definitely something that escalated too far, which I feel like shows a lack of self-control on Remy's part. And there more than likely was a better way to handle the situation, but it wasn't handled that way, and unfortunately Remy was arrested for the shooting. Now, I'm not gonna say it would be easy for me to know that somebody possibly stole or, you know, did something negative towards me and they were supposed to be my friend, but that's part of the problem that I feel when it comes to Remy Ma, is that she kind of has a loose cannon. She's a very fiery, feisty woman, but that doesn't mean that you can just fire off on somebody because you feel like it. And I think that over time, this whole anger thing, or this whole like really reactive personality that Remy has not necessarily worked 100% to her advantage. And it's one of the things that I feel like Papoose uses against her to keep her domiciled and to keep her very like controlled, basically putting her in a more subservient position. So boom, the catalyst event happens. Now, this is when Papoose decides to hold her down. And this is one thing that I wanted to point out, because a lot of people praise Papoose for being so supportive and loyal and holding Remy down while she was in prison, but this is a choice, okay? Let's not act like this man didn't have a choice. And I get that they were in a connection, and I get that he had strong feelings for her, but he had a choice as to whether or not he was going to change his entire life to stick by Remy's side, just like she had a choice of whether or not she was gonna fire that gun. So that's one thing that I really wanted to highlight, because a lot of people praise him for it, and I'm not saying that it's not honorable, but it was still a choice, okay? And I think he was in some interviews saying that, you know, people were telling him that it was a bad idea or that he shouldn't do that, but he was like, nah, he wanted to hold her down, and, you know, because women never have anybody support when they go to prison, and he was talking about all these things. But at the end of the day, this is a part of how he kind of tries to position himself as a victim. I feel like both of them try to position themselves as victims in certain situations, but it just expresses itself in different ways. So with Remy, she may be in a victim mentality and it expresses itself as anger, but with Papoose, which is sometimes a little bit more dangerous if you think about, you know, mental and emotional and spiritual well-being, he kind of exerts and exhibits this victim mentality in the form of manipulation. They both trauma bonded. They bonded together in a position of trauma. And that is why I feel like that was a catalyst event that changed the dynamics of their relationship. Them coming from a more mutual, equally footed standpoint of knowing each other and it kind of being a mutual thing. To me, that was more healthy than what it turned into after Papoose decided to stay with Remy Ma after this incident. So then he proceeded to hold her down, but it created cracks in the foundation and it put their relationship in a very very fragile place. They got married while Remy was still behind bars. And if you think about it, she was in a very vulnerable position. This is when I feel like Papoose decides to exert this air of power, or he decides to try to lock in his position in a place of power over Remy and kind of like over her choices and her state of mind. And this is when a lot of like the infiltration can come in. I know, for example, in my relationship, a lot of the reason why I was okay with having a baby and marrying my ex-husband was because, number one, my mom had just passed away only a few years beforehand. I was a teenager, I was angsty, I was upset, and I was in a household and a dynamic that wasn't necessarily completely functional itself. Even though my household looked good from the outside looking in when it comes to my uncle raising me and his wife, it was a very tumultuous situation. There were constantly undertones of my uncle's resentment towards my mother and her decisions, and it kind of felt like it was placed on me. And a lot of times my uncle doesn't understand that I didn't necessarily not want to be there at the house. I just was sad because I didn't have my mom. I had to move across the country and I didn't know anyone. I didn't have any friends. I didn't have anything that I was doing, and basically be in a place that I didn't necessarily quote unquote want to be, but that I had to be. And it wasn't because I didn't want to be there because of him. It was more so because of the trauma that I had just faced and everything that I went through leading up to that point. My life has not been an easy life. So when I ended up kind of starting to get around my ex-husband, he was using that fragile place and that vulnerable place that I was in to basically like be a listening ear and to get information out of me about my situation. And he was like the shoulder I had to cry on and all of those things. He also came from a really rough place. We both trauma bonded. We got together in a position where I felt personally that we were on equal ground and that we both wanted better for our lives. And I know it sounds counterproductive, but in my mind, the way that he was positioning himself is that he had all of these big dreams and things that he wanted to accomplish, and I did too. So it just made sense to do it together as a team. As an adult, hindsight is 2020. I understand this, but I'm trying to point out the similarities between the place that I was in vulnerably as a teenager and the place that Remy could have been in vulnerably behind bars in prison. And Papoose is the only one who comes to visit her, or he's the one who is giving her the most attention. I'm not saying she didn't get visits from other people, but what I'm saying is he's giving her all of this attention, which is kind of similar to a love bombing situation. And he has the power as to how and when and how much he's going to do this. And I'm not saying it's not honorable, but sometimes I feel like Papoose tells this whole story about coming to visit Remy every day and all of these things about how he wanted to stick by her side and about how women don't have support in prison. It's really performative, okay? When people come off in a performative, exaggerated way, it makes me question their true motives and intentions. And it's like he wants praise for being, you know, her savior or whatever, and nobody asked you to do that, sir. I never heard her come out and say that she asked him to visit her every day. I have just heard her basically say that that's what he did, and it showed her whatever it needed to show her about him, and kind of feels like her mind was molded while she was in that vulnerable position. So they get married while she's locked up, and at this point it's like he's solidifying and locking in his position of power, and they both in turn end up needing each other, quote unquote. It's like the way that everything was positioned, they now were united and connected legally, and they need each other. And I can kind of sense a little bit of resentment in Papoose's like tone sometimes, where it's like he's saying one thing, and listen, I'm telling y'all, this is from experience of listening to somebody gaslight me all the time for 14 plus years, okay? And I don't necessarily blame Remy for spazzing out the way she did, because sometimes when somebody is playing with your mind like that and twisting your mind like that, it makes you really feel trapped and feel as if you have nowhere to turn. Sometimes when Papoose will talk about like the sacrifices that he made for Remy and the ways that he showed up for Remy, it gives off a vibe that it's not like he didn't want to do it, because I feel like he did want to do it. However, the reason why he wanted to do it, I feel, was more selfish, and he doesn't want that to come out. He doesn't want people to realize that, and so therefore he kind of disguises his resentment towards Remy in this way where he's trying to express love and admiration, but deep down it's really resentment. But truthfully, I don't think he did any of this necessarily for Remy. I feel like that was a side effect of what he truly wanted for himself. I'm not sure what was going on behind the scenes when it comes to his career, but I just feel like his motives and intentions were projected into the future of what he saw that their relationship could be. It's like, I feel like he saw an opportunity to capitalize off of her story and off of her situation and off of her pain. He saw the opportunity that if he was the one standing by her side, that he maybe felt like he could play a pivotal role in her rehabilitation once she got out, and the rehabilitation of her image, so that he could be like the center of attention in that and kind of be like the reason why she made it through prison, you know. And that is very narcissistic, y'all. Listen, and this is why I said covert narcissism, because when you talk about something being covert, it's behind the scenes, it's hidden, it's not something that's projected outwardly in a very transparent way. There's all of this clouds and smoke, and it's not really very clear. That's what being covert is. If he was an overt narcissist, that means he wouldn't care what anybody thinks and he would say whatever he wants. But he obviously cares what people think, so he doesn't try to come off in a way where he's sounding really negative, but he comes off to me in a way where he has that underlying tone of resentment for her, because ultimately the plan didn't really work out the way I feel like he thought it would. We found out now that behind the scenes, he's not necessarily the sweetest, kindest, most loving or giving partner, according to not only Remy, but Clarissa. And it just leads me to believe that a lot of the things that he was doing for people in the public was a front. And that's often how it is when you deal with celebrities. That's just a part of the game. So now you guys can see that this fragile foundation has now built into a very shaky structure, basically because of obligation. Remy and Pap decide to build this brand, and they have this whole Black Love brand, and then they have a daughter, pretty much solidifying their connection by blood, and they're basically combining assets in this situation. And I feel like this is where Papoose is still in a position of power. If you look back at some of the episodes of Love and Hip Hop and the different things that he was saying, it's like, man, when I tell you, y'all,
I was really annoyed the other night when I was rushed out. It makes me still feel like I'm in prison where I have to be rushed off to myself. But now that I'm out, I want to breathe, chance to absorb the atmosphere and what was going on. It's like you grabbed me and got me out of there. I just had a whole platoon of people telling me what to do. I don't want to keep going by somebody's rigid plan.
Time to put the plan in motion there, and that's still my goal. But sometimes it seems like, you want to step outside of it.
I'm not a prisoner anymore. But sometimes I feel like that when you're like, let's go. What are you doing? You weren't the one that was physically in a cell.
Yeah,
that
traumatizes families, not just the individual. Incarcerate the person who was locked up.
You living out here.
That's not about how I feel. It's not about that.
It's not, and that's what you need to understand. Once you understand
I don't, though.
that I'm similar, but very different at the same time.
No, that is not true.
Hi.
Come on in.
Okay, busting up in Pap's studio session today because we have a wedding to plan. I was talking to Ra, and she's gonna help. What? Why are you doing that stupid phase?
I don't really know about that. You gotta watch who's around you, babe. We gotta be careful. We can't just let anybody come into your circle.
Pretty know what you're about to say. She wasn't there while you was in jail.
No, it's not even about me saying she wasn't there, because she wasn't there. I'm just acknowledging what's real. What this Rob situation reminds me of? It's kind of reminding me of the same situation that caused you to get all of that time, because you was actually with a friend.
But what I don't want to do, I don't want to live my life walking on eggshells like, is this person gonna sneak me to stay?
The best remedy for that is just keep it family orientated. All we got is us, man. I need to speak to you about DJ. Always looked up to Remy as a motherly figure. Seemed like your relationship fell apart.
It's not me. He turned 18. She was like, that's it. I'm 18.
Let me cut you off. Let me cut you off, though. We all would like you as my wife to put that to the side.
I kind of feel the kids in general are out of control, and I really feel like it's partly your fault.
It's not about fault. It's about understanding them and remembering when you was walking in their shoes.
When I was away in prison, Pat basically raised these kids by himself. And however, DJ's out here in these streets fighting. To understand that I'm home now and it's just gonna be some different rules around.
Let's just sit down and talk to them, babe. Let's all communicate as a family and get past this, okay? Thank you. Love you.
I love you too.
There haven't really been any men in my life who have treated me with kindness and love and compassion, but it doesn't mean that I hate men, like, because this whole situation is becoming a men versus women situation, and it's so played out, child. When you're talking about covert narcissism and when you're talking about mental and emotional abuse, it's very hard to explain, it's very hard to prove, it's very hard to identify, and usually the person who is expressing concern when it comes to them being treated in this way by a person who could be victimizing them often come off as the one who looks insane or crazy because of the fact that it is so hard to prove. And it kind of feels like to me in this situation with the moves that Papoose was making, he was kind of locking his claws into Remy Ma, leeching a bit off of her success, leeching off of her light, leeching off of her abilities and her aura and the accolades that she was making, while he really wasn't doing very much of his own personally, and really the only thing that he had going for him was her. So now when you look at it from that perspective, it really feels like the money has dried up when it comes to the benefits that Remy Ma can provide to Papoose, and more than likely because of everything that's been going on behind the scenes, she doesn't really want to go out of her way to give any extra effort, you know, to make sure that he's taken care of. It seems like she's ready to free herself and live her own life, kind of similar to the whole situation with Gypsy Rose and how she married Ryan and then got out of prison and didn't want to be kind of like tied down in that connection. And I'm not sure if this is a thing when it comes to people who hold relationships with people in prison, but that's kind of what it's giving. And a lot of wealthy people decide to still keep their business ventures together, or they decide not to get divorced so that they can maintain their wealth. But what it appears to me is happening is that because Remy has decided to kind of set a boundary and put her foot down on the back end in things that we may not have the access to be able to see, Papoose is not going to be able to benefit as much from the work that she puts in. Therefore, he's not able to reap the same rewards from their arrangements, and he's decided to focus his mind on revenge, which leads us to Clarissa, child. And she needs to run for the high heels because she's basically signing up and lining up to be his next victim, pretty much. She's putting herself in position to be locked into in the same way that he's locked into Remy, and put herself in a position to where he can do the same thing to her, benefiting from her success when he really doesn't have that much of his own. So I don't know, you guys, I could be wrong. I could just be, you know, grasping at straws, and after all, I'm just some girl online who doesn't know what's going on behind the scenes. But from the outside looking in, with the deductive reasoning that I've put on the situation and my experience tying some of the clues together for me, this is what I feel like is going on. So y'all be sure to let me know what you think in the comments. Let me know if I left anything out, you guys. I love to hear from you and I really appreciate your support. Be sure to like and subscribe to continue to catch the vibe, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.